Well, the Republican candidates aren't holding anything back as we get closer to Saturday's South Carolina primary. The remaining six came out swinging during this weekend's fiery debate. Jeb Bush and Donald Trump clashing over the Iraq War and President George W. Bush's record on national security. Some say Jeb's ability to fire back at Trump won him the debate, but Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz also exchanging sharp jabs, accusing each other of lying about immigration reform. And the tough talk spilling over into the Sunday shows where Bush and Cruz went after Trump.
I do think that he would not be the proper nominee for our party. He's not a conservative. He's not a serious person. His conversations in debates when he talks about foreign policy, it's scary.
Donald Trump is not a conservative. For his entire life, he has been self-described very, very pro-choice. He supported partial birth abortion. You know, yesterday, he defended Planned Parenthood and federal taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood on the debate stage. George, have you ever seen a Republican on a Republican debate stage defending taking federal taxpayer money and giving it to Planned Parenthood? He said he thinks they do terrific things.
Well, despite the recent pile-on, the latest CBS News poll taken before the debate shows Trump maintaining a big lead in South Carolina with 42%. Cruz is a distant second with just 20%. Guy, I'm going to go to you first. The two biggest moments that stood out to me during the debate, as Ted Cruz mentioned, Donald Trump's defense of Planned Parenthood, and also him piling on with the liberal talking point that George Bush intentionally lied about 9/11.
Yeah, it's funny, when you watch these debates, you get a sense of maybe who won and who lost. I watched that debate and I said I think Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush had really good nights. CBS did an overnight poll showing Rubio won with Jeb in last. It just sort of shocked me. So always take everything with a grain of salt because people see different things. They see what they want to see. The moment in that exchange on Iraq and then also spilling over into 9/11, to me, was sort of breathtaking at times because I actually agree with Donald Trump. I think looking back, certainly, the Iraq War was a mistake. Now, whether he was warning against it at the time, I think might be a little bit of a fiction on his part, but he's right about that. But he took it several steps further, saying that George Bush was to blame for 9/11, that he could have killed bin Laden and didn't. He had called for impeachment of President Bush at the time. He said it was an intentional lie to get us into the Iraq War. This is straight out of, he is Michael Moore with nicer China-made suits. That's what Donald Trump was talking like and looking like at that debate. It's like, what primary is he running in? This would probably get a lot of applause in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, well, Andrea, that'd be my question to you. I mean, nationally, this might play a little better than it would in a GOP primary, considering George W. Bush was not popular when he left office. He has an 80% approval rating within the Republican Party. He's popular in South Carolina. But do you think Trump's motive there was to win the primary, or was he talking nationally? Because it didn't make a lot of sense to me.
It didn't make any sense to me, and I don't know what he was thinking when he said it. I think there's a lot of Republicans, I'm one of them, that were on Capitol Hill writing the talking points for the Iraq War and felt like the nation building and the democracy promotion, that fantasy in the Middle East, was a mistake after we went in. And that's really why I listen to Donald Trump and I listen to someone like a Ted Cruz, and they resonate with me. No more inky fingers, no more democracy promotion, no more wasting our blood and treasure on that kind of thing. Also, when you hear him talk about immigration, Charles Murray wrote this weekend in the Wall Street Journal about immigration, the blue-collar worker. Donald Trump has really conservative and good points when he talks about that. A lot of crossover appeal. What I didn't understand, Katie, is if he was doing that, to reach out to, say, some Reagan Democrats, that line about 9/11 is not going to reach Reagan Democrats. That's going to reach Rosie O'Donnell Democrats.
That's right.
And he will never get them anyway. I mean, I'm sitting there going, wait. When Rosie O'Donnell's watching a debate and probably going, yes, I agree with Donald Trump, even though he called me a pig, we got problems. And he definitely has problems. So I can't wait to see how this plays out. I really am fascinated to see how voters will handle this. But also, on a night when there should have been real unity in the Republican Party because of the passing of Scalia, it was so divisive. And I wonder why the RNC would allow a knife fight on CBS with our candidates. And the DNC will not even let Bernie and Hillary sit down with the Fox News channel. It's shameful.
That debate did nothing to honor the intellect or the integrity of Justice Scalia, and it was abomination, quite frankly. I've always given Donald Trump credit, though, for knowing his audience and being super savvy. And to y'all's point, I couldn't figure out what he was going for. calling President Bush a liar and basically laying the blame in his feet for 9/11. I think part of it was, and this is his temper, that audience was not with him, whether it was stacked against him or not. And when he's in front of people who are not genuflecting and shrieking, I love Trump, I love Trump, build the wall, he got red in the face and was grabbing the microphone and he went off the rails.
Well,
and that's another danger for him as a politician.
And I've got to say, and you and I talked, Guy, and I talked about this briefly in the green room, I'm not even making this as a partisan point. For years, the Republican Party has stood against Planned Parenthood, and the Republican Party has stood for the concept that George Bush, the war may or may not have been a good idea, but he didn't lead us there under false pretenses. You had the Republican frontrunner. I couldn't believe this. The Republican frontrunner saying Planned Parenthood does some good things. Now, I happen to agree with him, but I'm not running in the Republican primary. And saying George Bush purposely and willfully made up this canard of weapons of mass destruction to get us into the Iraq War. I wouldn't say, Michael Moore I don't think would even say that. So to me, the question is, if he ends up being the Republican nominee, the wall aside, Mexico aside, what does the Republican Party stand for? Because this takes everything that I've heard from the Republican Party, everybody else on that stage. Every single other person made sense to me as the Republican nominee.
Well, and to Dagan's point, you know, I was reading over the weekend Plato's The Statesman, where he talks about what makes an exceptional leader. Yes, I turn to the Greeks for their wisdom on these such things.
As you should.
Yes, as I should. And he writes about it takes two things, primarily courage, which it does take courage to be Donald Trump and come out and just shirk the establishment and that political correctness that's crippled the country. But he also talks about temperament. And I think that's really important. And I think you look at what happened on Saturday night and your head just spins.
And when you talk about temperament, I was thinking about President Bush and thinking how he has carried himself during President Obama's administration, how he carried himself through the darkest days, certainly, of my life so far after 9/11. And it made me sad. Yeah, it made me sad for him to be attacked.
And I think,
that.
Guy, you and I talk about this all the time. When Donald Trump makes the argument that Planned Parenthood does wonderful things, we just should ignore the abortion part and therefore they should get federal funding, he's actually making Planned Parenthood's argument for them. That's the argument that they make to maintain their funding.
Yep. And I'm glad he did, but I don't think that was the right venue to do it.
Yeah. We will see, right?
We'll see.
Couple days.
When you said
South Carolina.
Yeah, when you said it's okay that he's for partial birth abortion, and then he turns that he's for universal health care, and then he changes his mind, I think that this is a bigger problem.
It's a bigger issue.